The movie Duel was Steven Spielberg's first feature-length film, originally produced as a made-for-TV movie in 1971, before receiving a theatrical release overseas. Even with those television limitations, you can already see the confidence, creativity, and filmmaking instincts that would eventually make Spielberg one of the most important directors in cinema history. Welcome back to ZakIsCinema, everybody. We are very happy to have you here. If you have nobody to talk to about movies, guess what? It is now your lucky day because that is exactly what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be doing a review and discussion video on Steven Spielberg's movie Duel from 1971. And before we jump into the review and discussion for this video, this is such an important and special movie to me. Duel was one of those movies that my dad showed me when I was at an incredibly young age because he had remembered watching it on TV when he was right around my age. I think the first time I saw this movie, I had to have been maybe 8 or 9 years old, and it was truly one of those first movie experiences that is like burned into my brain and subconscious. It is one of those films that kind of made me realize I have more than just a casual at best interest in movies and filmmaking, but really my calling and passion for this type of art, the art that we call film. So it's one of those first movies that I also sat down after I finished watching the movie and watched the special DVD features on. It was like the first movie I had ever done that besides all the Star Wars movies, and I just remember almost enjoying just listening to Steven Spielberg sit down and talk about the behind the scenes and the aspects of this movie almost as much as I enjoyed watching the movie in and of itself. So let's start talking about it here because we're about to jump into the positives or just the things that I really love about this movie. I think this is one of the prime examples of just how well a simple concept can really elevate a thriller movie just like this with its simple premise. And even with that simple premise, and then you add on the made-for-TV limitations and the origins of this film, Duel to me still feels surprisingly cinematic, tightly crafted, and incredibly confident from a first-time director. And watching it today, you can clearly see why Spielberg went on to have the career that he did. And he's got a brand new movie coming out called Disclosure Day. And that's why I'm kind of looking back at one of my favorite Spielberg movies here. And what I love most about this concept in Duel is it solely works because of the era it was made in. In a world before cell phones, technology, GPS, instant communication, this situation only feels very plausible in the 70s and 80s, but this was early 70s. It's a movie that genuinely feels like the definition of a time capsule to me. That old school simplicity is such a part of what makes this experience so effective. And me personally, this movie, not only with the massive truck villain, it just taps into a specific fear I have with driving. I'm not afraid to, drive, but it's not like something that I actively avoid, but sometimes I just get super fixated on the fact that I am sitting in a poorly made chair wrapped around in metal, just flying down concrete at 60 to 65 miles per hour. And there is nothing separating me from life and death besides my own personal reflexes. It feels like I'm constantly on a roller coaster with no tracks, but the tracks are my two hands, and I'm constantly in charge of keeping the tracks together here. And to me, Spielberg just kind of adds that anxiety of driving and then later adds a new whole element onto it with someone literally chasing this guy down to murder him. And I think that concept alone just added the almost double fear experience I was having when I rewatched this here. And I absolutely adore the opening sequence for this film. And I say this all the time here on the channel, but I really do miss when films had their credits in the opening, their opening crawl. It was always really creative and fun to see how directors and filmmakers would kind of incorporate that into the story's opening. Like do something other than just a simple text crawl, and Spielberg immediately does something very creative with them. All throughout our opening credit sequence, he is mounting this camera on the front of our main character's vehicle, kind of letting us glide through the roads in this very unique perspective. It not only establishes the setting, most importantly, but we're kind of seeing the world and the experience in the road through the eyes of the truck before we have even met or started the movie. So I love that aspect, and I just love seeing names before I start watching a movie for some reason. And I love how this movie introduces the villain of this big ass gasoline truck very, very early on, and the introduction is incredible and still holds up. Spielberg presents it almost as a movie monster, very similar to Jaws in a way, where the vehicle is very in your face, but the driver is very hidden, similar to the shark in Jaws. And I think what stands out to me the most is the sound design here. It's very heavy, very intimidating. My subwoofer was going crazy during many moments in this film, and the truck just dominates every frame this movie has it in. And I love how it just takes a simple passing maneuver from our main character to establish itself as a genuine threat. And from that moment on, within 3 to 4 minutes from the opening sequence, it feels less like a vehicle and more like an ongoing predator. And I love that you get these action-packed chase sequences, something out of Mad Max, but then you also get some more effective scenes where it's nothing more than this big gasoline truck just psychologically tormenting our main character here, letting him pass, constantly speeding up behind him again, brake checking him, swerving to prevent him from overtaking, even at one point waving him to pass early on when our main character does, realizing he's about to get in a head-on collision. So this truck is not only trying to do whatever he has to do to kill this main character, but he's willing to just sacrifice everybody else on the road to get at this main character. It feels realistic road rage taken in a very extreme way, and to me, that's what makes it so unsettling because of how importantly grounded he keeps this. And I love the psychological, almost ghost-like angle Spielberg adds to this with the truck constantly toying with our main character. Sometimes it just kind of completely disappears for a bit, giving both the audience and protagonist a sense of relief, only to suddenly reappear and starting the harassment all over again. It feels like that chase aspect, but then also less like a chase and more like a prolonged form of psychological abuse. And I love how the truck moves in a way that isn't really realistic with the disappearing and reappearing, but it never does it too much where I feel like I'm watching like Christine, like a haunted car movie. And me personally, one of my favorite scenes, or I guess sequences in any film I have ever seen actually comes from this movie Duel. It's the scene where our main character is first run off the road. Our protagonist just gives up for a little bit, retreats into this small town diner, and he's really just hoping to kind of wait out the truck. He then goes to the bathroom, cleans up, comes back inside the diner, only to see the huge ass gasoline truck parked right outside. I love from that point, it's just such a tense sequence because you know that gasoline truck driver is hidden somewhere within all these people in this diner, but we've never seen his face. We don't really know what he looks like, and our main character doesn't know. So everybody in this small diner becomes a suspect immediately. And the paranoia Spielberg creates in this sequence is incredible. It stood out to me when I watched it for the first time when I was 8 or 9, and I've truly never forgotten that sequence. Our main character begins convincing himself that everybody could be the driver, kind of trying to pin it down, and Spielberg shoots the scene that makes us kind of question everything alongside our main character here. He is constantly looking at the boots, trying to match it up because we saw him earlier, the lingering stares, the constant paranoia of feeling everybody's watching him and judging him. It genuinely feels like he's kind of losing grip on the situation and reality altogether. And I love how Spielberg not only takes that great sequence, but then also kind of adds this ticking time element to it. One by one, a couple of the customers leave the diner, forcing us to kind of look out the window with our main character. And he is constantly trying to guess who this driver is. As people leave, he's wondering if that's who it is, but then they start driving off in different cars. And he's then left with the remaining suspects in the diner, still kind of questioning everything, still even wondering if people are maybe getting in fake cars or something to throw him off. But then the movie in this sequence kind of pulls the rug out from underneath you because you feel like there's going to be some sort of confrontation here. But then we see out the window the gasoline truck leaving, implying that he was never even really in the diner. He was just fucking with him the whole time. And it is one of the strongest suspense sequences, one of those movie moments that just stood out to me on how well crafted you could take such a simple scene and really elevate it. And it's something I've never forgotten. And kind of going back to Spielberg's more supernatural approach to this big gasoline truck, I love how sometimes it is loud, aggressive, and impossible to ignore, but then there are plenty of other times where there's this eerie silence and the truck just comes out of nowhere. For example, that train sequence is a perfect example of this, where the truck just suddenly emerges behind our main character after we haven't seen it for quite some time and tries to force his car into oncoming train tracks with a train going by. It's thrilling, but it also has this genuine slight horror movie edge to it, which I absolutely adore. And even though this is essentially a 90-minute chase sequence, Spielberg never lets off the pedal, literally, where the movie just kind of keeps elevating. It keeps getting more unhinged, and it's even more impressive the more it keeps going. And I love that escalation aspect to it. And what starts as an uncomfortable road rage scenario transforms into someone's literal worst nightmare. And the telephone booth, which we were talking about earlier with the mistakes Spielberg was pointing out, it's a perfect example. The truck literally smashes through the telephone booth where our protagonist is trapped inside. It's an incredible stunt sequence that looks like they really trapped the main guy in there and had him duck out the last second. And it's one of those moments you look back on and see where Spielberg's action instincts really started to shine. And all this movie is doing is leading to the climax, which I really, really like here. The cinematography, the score, and the sheer scale of the final confrontation is all done to perfection here. Watching our protagonist sacrifice his car by locking the accelerator pedal down, I think with a briefcase, and jumping out before the impact creates such a genuinely satisfying payoff. And then Spielberg gives this truck an amazing final death sequence when it then crashes over the cliff because of our main character blasting his car into it, and almost kind of resembles this like dying animal sequence. And I love how Spielberg chooses to make this ending sequence linger and also introduces some ambiguity to it as well. If you look back before the truck goes off the cliff, you can clearly see the truck's driver's side door wide open before it even gets right to the cliff. And it kind of makes you wonder if the driver, escaped. Is he even inside at all? Is he still alive? Is this just part of his game? Was he even in it? It's a creepy final touch that really preserves the mystery of this movie and its movie's ending and really makes the truck feel even more mythic than it did from the very beginning here. So absolutely adore this movie. I do have some nitpicks, so let's jump over to my mixed aspects for this movie. And even though I was just praising this movie's ending, I do think it's just kind of missing one final beat to really wrap up the story and make this an almost perfect movie. Not sitting here in the corner of my apartment claiming to think better than Spielberg just on this most recent rewatch. I think it would have been personally really fascinating if the police had finally arrived at that final confrontation, because throughout the movie there is multiple witnesses to this. There's one or two times somebody contacts the police, so they are or must be somewhat aware of what's going on, but just have no details to the situation whatsoever, and we never see them show up. But I think at that final confrontation, having the police show up as our main character's just ramming his car into this truck and just seeing and showing showing up at the aftermath without any context or anything, it would almost kind of look, at least at first, that our main protagonist is absolutely insane from the police's perspective. And it could have made for an even darker ending if they were putting him in cuffs with that creepy, eerie music going and the ambiguity of if the driver is still alive. Is he going to get out of this and pin it on the wrong guy? So I just wish there was a little bit more of that dark final note to really wrap things up, because once the truck goes over, you just kind of have our main character like sitting there. And that one final note, I think, really would have made this an absolutely perfect movie, in my opinion. And such a minor nitpick, but I do kind of wish the movie did a better job at hiding the driver. For most of the film, the large majority, Spielberg treats the driver and the truck as this unknown force, and that's what makes him so intimidating. However, there are a few moments, and I guess it's maybe the limitations of a TV movie, the budget, first-time director, where you can kind of catch glimpses of pretty clear shots, and he just looks like some middle-aged, slightly overweight truck driver with a hat on. And I think that was maybe a couple times too many of too close of a shot of this driver. It's a small complaint because the mystery still works. It just kind of reminds me of some of those Halloween movies where you can clearly see the eyes of the actor playing Michael Myers, and it's easy to look past, but it does kind of take an element away from the movie. So I wish it was almost kind of just pitch black, really looking like there was nobody behind the wheel. I think that and my little bit of issue with the ending, or I guess addition I'm recommending for the ending, I think this would easily be a 5 out of 5 for me. So with that said, I would say overall, Duel is a masterclass in simple storytelling and suspense, transforming an ordinary drive into a relentless nightmare while showcasing the confidence and filmmaking talent that would make Steven Spielberg one of cinema's greatest directors. So for my rating for this movie, this is easily a movie I own on Blu-ray, but I think, and hopefully one day, if not, they have a 4K release, because I'd easily pay the full price. This is an important movie to me, and I will always want it and need it as a part of my collection here. So you guys have my full thoughts on the movie Duel. Please, down below, let me know. Have you seen this movie? Have you ever heard of this movie? Are you going to check out this movie? If you have checked it out, let me know your thoughts and feelings down below, and let me know your excitement for Disclosure Day. And I'd kind of like to hear, what would you like to see Steven Spielberg tackle next? But with all that said, I appreciate anybody watching my videos. Thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.